Today, we're going to look at the Hyraxes, the odd rodent-like mammals whose closest relatives may surprise you. As usual, a document with the sources for the images used, along with the research papers I found useful, will be included in the description of this video. Hyraxes are in the superorder Afrotheria. This is the first time I'm covering this superorder on my channel, and it is a fascinating group of animals, so I want to take a minute to go through it. As you might guess from the name, Afrotheria is comprised of animals that are found in Africa, or at least originated on that continent. Mammals are broadly divided into three groups based on their reproductive strategy: the egg-laying monotremes, then the pouch-bearing marsupials, and finally the placental mammals. Afrotheria is one of the most basal of the placental mammals. It is most closely related to another odd group, the xenarthrans, which includes the armadillos, sloths, and anteaters from South America. Afrotheria has two major clades. Down the first one, we have the aardvark in its own family, Hyracoidea. Then we come to the clade known as Afroinsectivora. This is not a particularly inventive name, as it contains the African insectivores. This includes the elephant shrews in Macroscelodidae, and then the golden moles in Chrysochloridea. Finally, we have the otter shrews in Potomegalidae, and the tenrecs in Tenrecidae. You may notice many of these common names often reference animals that are not at all closely related, like otters, shrews, and moles, none of which are in Afrotheria. The best common name in terms of accurate relationships is definitely the elephant shrew, which I guess takes us to the other clade in Afrotheria. This starts with the subject of today's video, the Hyraxes in Procaviidae. Despite looking a little like some rodents, like guinea pigs, they are not closely related. Instead, the closest groups to Hyraxes are the order Sirenia, containing the manatees and dugongs, and the family Elephantidae, or the elephants. If it is not something you are already aware of, this is one of the most surprising things. Looking at a small Hyrax, you do not expect them to be closely related to the largest land animals alive today, and it is unlikely that the aquatic manatees will have been your first or second guess either. Hyraxes, manatees, and elephants do share some surprising similarities. Males, for example, all have internal testicles. These are located near their kidneys, but among mammals this is unique to the Afrotherians. Females of these species all have nipples near their armpits or the equivalent area. Hyraxes also have nipples near the groin, which is not a feature shared by the elephants or manatees, but the placement of them near the armpit is highly unusual. Most of these species also have tusks. This feature is of course most well known in elephants. Oddly, the manatees seem to have lost this feature, despite their closest relative, the dugong, still having tusks. In elephants, hyraxes, and dugongs, their tusks are formed from their incisor teeth, which are also very unusual, as most animals with tusks have them formed from their canine teeth. In hyraxes, these tusks grow continuously throughout their life, similar to the teeth of rodents. One more similarity is actually their toenails. The aquatic Sirenia have evolved away from having toenails at all, but hyraxes and elephants both have flattened toenails, which are highly unusual, with most mammals having claws instead. There are other exceptions to this, of course, with humans and other primates being the obvious examples, but it still is unusual. Hyraxes also share some less obvious traits with elephants as well, such as exceptional hearing, sensitive pads on their feet, and a very good memory. The order Hyracoidea only contains the 6 species of Hyraxes today, but it used to be a much more diverse and widespread group. The earliest Hyraxes or Hyrax-grouped animals are known from northern Africa, like Algeria or Egypt, and lived up to 55 million years ago. Prehistoric Hyraxes are known to have been widespread, with remains found through much of the Middle East and Africa, and many different genera have been identified. Despite how small modern Hyraxes are, many of their ancient ancestors were massive. This might not be too surprising, given their relationship to elephants, but it is still hard to imagine. Megalohyrax, for example, is a genus found 55 to 11 million years ago. They are estimated to be about the size of a modern tapir. If you have not managed to see one of those, then take my word for it that they are large. Megalohyrax could get larger than 1.5 meters or 4 feet 11 long, and they were very large-bodied with a relatively low and long head. The largest of these prehistoric Hyraxes, however, was Titanohyrax. 6 species in this genus have been described, but the largest was Titanohyrax ultimus. It could get to about the size of a modern-day rhinoceros. These behemoths were 2 meters or 6.5 feet long. Estimates of its weight vary a lot, but are around 600 kilograms or 1,300 pounds for the smallest. But some researchers have put this weight as high as 1,300 kilograms or 2,800 pounds. It was not just their size that could be surprising either. There is evidence of some extinct Hyraxes with different lifestyles, such as evidence suggesting that Thyrohyrax was semi-aquatic. Not all extinct Hyraxes were as large as the ones I mentioned, with the smallest being about the size of a mouse, and it is likely from one of the smaller groups that the modern Hyraxes evolved. It is not clear exactly what the relationship of the modern Hyraxes to the prehistoric ones is. They are included somewhere in the family Sagittariinae, but that subfamily includes all of the prehistoric genera I have named, so it does not exactly help in narrowing down the possibilities. The large Hyraxes likely faced increasing pressure from the appearance of more efficient grazers and browsers like the bovids. As a result, they were likely outcompeted and were relegated to marginal niches. It is believed that this is the reason that the smaller Hyraxes managed to survive long past the time when their massive relatives went extinct. Modern Hyraxes are all in the family Procaviidae. This family has 3 different genera with roughly 6 species between them. The exact number of Hyraxes has fluctuated over the years, with over 11 recognized in the 1990s, but this number was reduced until it was only 4 species in 2013, with the others becoming subspecies. As of 2024, this number is at 6, but there are suggestions that one of the current species should actually be split into several species, so that number may increase again in the next few years. Hyraxes have retained some features that are primitive compared to most animals. In particular, they have trouble regulating their body temperature. To compensate for this, they show some behaviors to help them maintain their temperature, such as basking in sunlight or huddling together for warmth. Hyraxes are not ruminants, but do have multiple stomachs with symbiotic bacteria to help them break down tough vegetation, similar to sheep and cows. They are physically incapable of regurgitation, however, so cannot chew the cud like true ruminants do. Interestingly, Hyraxes are mentioned in the Bible, and in the book of Leviticus it does refer to them as chewing the cud. This is likely either a mistranslation or a misunderstanding, as Hyraxes can make chewing-like motions when they feel threatened, but they can definitely not chew the cud. Another difference to these distantly related herbivores is that bovids use their incisors to feed. In Hyraxes, their incisors are tusks, so they cannot use them in this way, and instead they use their molar teeth. Hyraxes do not build dens or burrows, like other similar-looking mammals, but instead they find pre-existing cavities in rocks or trees to live in. Hyraxes tend to live in small family groups, with a single male that aggressively defends his territory from other males. When resources are abundant, a single male may roam over a territory that contains multiple groups of females. Larger males can defend their territory more successfully, so smaller and younger males tend to be solitary and often only get the chance to mate with younger females. Starting with the rock Hyrax, Procavia capensis, it is the only species in its genus. It has a wide variety of other names, like Cape Hyrax or rock rabbit. They are also called dassies in South Africa, which is a word derived from the Afrikaans word for them. They are widely found throughout large parts of Africa, and are the only Hyrax present in the Middle East. They are, in fact, the only terrestrial Afrotherian in the Middle East, with the terrestrial qualifier only needed because the aquatic dugong can also be found along parts of the coastline. Given this large range, it is perhaps unsurprising that there are subspecies. As mentioned before, these are sometimes elevated to be their own species, but typically 5 subspecies of the rock Hyrax are recognized, and these are divided based on their geographic range. The different subspecies do look different, with different fur colors and, in one case, fur length. However, even within a single subspecies, they still have some variation in color. One feature that among Hyraxes is only known from the rock Hyrax is a gland they use to mark their territory and for social communication. The gland is larger and therefore more visible in dominant males. They live in habitats with rocky crevices, which they use for shelter and to escape from danger. They can be found at elevations up to 4,200 meters or 13,800 feet above sea level. They are typically most active in the morning and evening, likely due to their poor thermoregulation, as this allows them to avoid being outside in the hot day or the cold night. This can vary widely over their range depending on the season and climate. Rock Hyraxes spend most of their time resting. To help with their thermoregulation, they're frequently seen basking in the sun and, in addition to this, will also pile on top of each other. Rock Hyraxes live in groups from 10 to as many as 80 animals. They forage together and show meerkat-like behaviour, such as posting sentries to warn of danger. Social behaviours in rock hyraxes are actually very well studied, and the group seems to perform better when they lack a dominant leader. The individuals live longer and the colony is more successful. One suggestion for this is that information to all colony members is important, and dominant individuals interfere with this structure. Their social structure seems to be highly effective, as while many predators would prey on rock hyraxes if given the chance, terrestrial predators like wild dogs or wolves rarely get the chance to do so. This is because the sentries give ample warning for the hyraxes to be able to take refuge in the rock crevices. Aerial predators like hawks and eagles are more successful, and although it is not confirmed, it would seem likely that snakes may also be an issue, as they would be narrow enough to follow the hyraxes into the crevices. One notable predator is Varro's eagle, which is highly specialised. The rock hyrax and its close relative, the bush hyrax, make up over half and frequently over 90% of this eagle's diet. This is extremely specialised for a hawk or eagle, with only the snail-eating eagles being disfocused on a single prey species. Unsurprisingly for such a social animal, rock hyraxes can make a wide range of vocalizations and signals to communicate. They use a high trill to warn of danger, but other calls can give information about size, age, social status, weight, condition, and their receptiveness to mating. In essence, their calls contain their individual identity. This complex information is passed on by varying the length, pattern, complexity, or frequency of their calls. There is even some evidence that hyrax calls have a form of vocabulary, something previously only found in mammals among primates, cetaceans, and bats. Females give birth to 2 to 4 young at a time. Their gestation period is relatively long for their size, being around 6 to 7 months. This does mean that the young are well developed when they are born, with open eyes and a full coat of fur. They start eating solids after 2 weeks and are fully weaned by 10 weeks. While they become sexually mature at around 16 months old, they do not reach their full adult size until they are about 3 years old, and rock hyraxes live to be about 10 years old. Rock hyraxes defecate in the same location over multiple generations. These locations are often in sheltered caves, and over time this waste becomes hardened into a product known as hyraceum. Hyraceum can be used in some traditional medicines to treat epilepsy, but it can also be used to give scientists an excellent record of climate and vegetation from the time it was deposited, which could be as long as 50,000 years ago. Rock hyraxes are considered least concern. In some parts of their range they are actually considered minor pests as they can cause damage to crops. The main threat to them is humans encroaching on their habitat, especially if this includes humans building on the rock crevices that they rely on. The next genus only contains one living species, the bush hyrax, Heterohyrax brucei. The common name is used to distinguish it from the rock hyrax in the genus Procavia, and the tree hyraxes in the genus Dendrohyrax. They have several other names as well, such as the hogger hyrax and the yellow-spotted rock hyrax. It is widespread throughout eastern Africa, but there is also a population in southwestern Africa, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Angola. While there is currently only one species in this genus, the bush hyrax does have a lot of variation, and so currently has up to 25 recognised subspecies. While it can be difficult to tell apart from the rock hyrax in the field, it does have several notable differences. They are a little smaller, with a narrower muzzle, and their teeth are also different, and finally, they cannot interbreed. The yellow-spotted common name of this species is due to a dorsal gland some individuals have. Not all seem to have this gland, but in those that do, it secretes a substance that plays a role in sexual arousal, and also in young recognizing their mothers. However, the yellow-spotted name is because the fur around this gland gets stained, and while the colour can vary, it is most often yellow, giving them a yellow spot on their back. They have another gland on the pads of their feet, keeping their feet damp. When climbing, they form their feet into a cupped shape, which along with the glands gives them a suction cup-like effect. This makes them excellent climbers, and the effect is so strong that if they are killed while climbing, they can remain stuck to a vertical surface. While most of their nails are flat like those in other hyraxes, they do have one long curved claw that they use for grooming. Bush Hyraxes are browsers, eating leaves, twigs, and flowers, but very rarely grass. They are able to survive in environments with very little water. What little they do need, they can get from their food, so they have no need to drink. Their kidneys are specialized to prevent water loss, so their urine is highly concentrated and quickly forms hyraceum when released. Bush Hyraxes live an average of 12 years in the wild. Females breed once a year and have a litter of 1 to 3 young. These are weaned somewhere between 1 to 6 months and become sexually mature at 16 or 17 months old. Juvenile mortality is fairly high due to predation. The Varroa eagle also preys on bush hyraxes, but other birds of prey, snakes and mongooses can also be an issue. Bush hyraxes are highly social, but it has not been quite so well documented as the rock hyraxes. They do still live in colonies, which have about 34 members on average. Within the colony, however, are smaller family groups. Playing is generally only seen in juveniles, and is expressed by nipping, climbing, play fighting, and chasing. They tend to rely on their good eyesight and hearing to warn of approaching danger. They do not seem to use sentries. If attacked, they will bite the threat viciously. Bush hyraxes are considered least concern. They are hunted by humans in some regions, although typically only when other targets are scarce. It has no major threats, and so its population seem to be doing well. Now we can move on to the third genus, Dendrohyrax. This is the one with the most currently recognized species. They are known as the tree hyraxes, and as this name suggests, are more arboreal than the rock or bush hyraxes. As with all hyraxes, the exact number of species is debatable, but there are 4 commonly accepted ones. Tree hyraxes have 4 toes on their front feet and 3 on their back feet. The soles of their feet are rubbery to help them grip branches and twigs when climbing. While common throughout their ranges, tree hyraxes are a lot harder to see than their rock or bush cousins, as they are typically nocturnal, very shy, and often hidden in dense foliage. Tree hyraxes lack the tapetum lucidum in the eyes of most nocturnal animals. Tapetum lucidum is a layer of tissue that reflects light back, but the reason that I am mentioning it here is that it is what causes eye shine if you shine a light at a cat or other nocturnal animal. Tree hyraxes lack this, and so have no eyeshine. Since eyeshine is one of the easiest ways to spot nocturnal animals with the aid of a flashlight, this also contributes to them being particularly hard to find. The first species is the western tree hyrax, Dendrohyrax dorsalis. They are found in central and western Africa. They are 44 to 57 centimeters, or 17 to 22 inches long, and have thick, coarse fur. They are mostly brown but can have a few yellow hairs flecked through it. One thing that will soon become apparent among tree hyraxes is that they are much less social than their rock or bush counterparts, and the western tree hyrax is no exception. They are usually solitary, but can sometimes be found in groups of 2 or 3. They are an excellent climber, and captive specimens have been seen holding on with their teeth to assist with this. They are prey to many predatory cats, birds, and snakes. One interesting interaction was seen in Guinea, however, where a chimpanzee captured a western tree hyrax and kept it as a pet, grooming it and sleeping with it. This does suggest that chimpanzees, at least, may not see them as prey. Their gestation period is about 8 months, which is very long for a mammal of this size, and they only have 1 or 2 young per pregnancy. It is considered least concern by the IUCN. It is not considered threatened due to its large range, and it occurs in a number of protected areas and remote sites. There are no estimates of how many there are, but it is assumed that it has a large population. The Benin tree hyrax, Dendrohyrax interfluvialis, is the most recently described hyrax species, only being elevated to full species status in 2021. Before this, they were included with the western tree hyraxes, so unfortunately this means that there is not a lot of information on them. Benin tree hyraxes are only found between the Volta and Niger rivers, and so are only in a small part of West Africa, along the coast in parts of Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria. Its scientific name even reflects this distribution, with interfluvialis coming from Latin and literally meaning between rivers. The most distinctive difference between Benin and western tree hyraxes is their calls. Benin tree hyraxes use a loud bark when calling to others, while western ones use a shriek that has been described as similar to a klaxon. It was really this difference in call that made the Benin tree hyrax a population of interest when trying to determine if there were more species of tree hyrax than the ones that had currently been recognized. However, the difference can also be found on a genetic level, supporting the claim that this should, in fact, be considered a different species. It does have some physical differences as well, although these can be harder to see in the wild. Its head is a little narrower, and it is typically 50 to 55 centimeters or 19 to 21 inches long, which, while within the size range of the western tree hyraxes, it is at the larger end of this range. Despite most of the literature citing tree hyraxes as nocturnal, Benin tree hyraxes have been seen moving both at night and during the day. It is unknown if this is a gap in the literature concerning all of the tree hyraxes, or if this is something unique to the Benin ones. The southern tree hyrax, Dendrohyrax arboreus, is the next species within this genus. It is found in the central eastern side of Africa, with some isolated populations further south. It is covered with long greyish-brown fur, and they have an average length of 52 centimeters or 20 inches. As with the other tree hyraxes, they are mostly nocturnal and live either alone, in pairs, or in very small groups. They tend to live in tree hollows or dense foliage. While they are excellent climbers, they can also walk across the ground. When they do, they use odd movements where they bounce rapidly for a short burst and then stop, look around, and then bounce forwards again. It is known for its distinctive call, which is sometimes described as blood-curdling. These calls are believed to be the calls of males marking their territory, and as you would expect with a nocturnal species, they are mostly heard at night. Like other hyraxes, they have a relatively long gestation period of around 7 months, and then give birth to 1 to 2 young. Newborns have extremely bad coordination skills, and stay on the hollow for the first week after birth. After this, they will start to follow their mother around over branches, and they quickly improve their mobility at this time. They learn what plants to eat by watching their mother feed, and will often taste what she is eating, even before being weaned. They eat a diverse range of foods, including leaves, shoots, bark, fruit, and flowers. They become sexually mature at 12 months old. Southern tree hyraxes are considered least concern. This is due to its large range in population, as well as occurring in some protected areas. However, it is noted that much of its forest habitat in eastern Africa is under threat from deforestation and habitat degradation. As such, it is possible that the risk level could be upgraded in the future if this trend continues. The last species of hyrax is the eastern tree hyrax, Dendrohyrax validus. Its status as a full species is a little controversial, with some scientists preferring to include it as a subspecies of the southern tree hyrax, but the general consensus is that it is a separate species. That is one dispute with this species, but the second dispute is actually the opposite problem. They also have 4 recognized subspecies, so other people say that with more research and genetic testing, it may also prove that this species represents a species complex with 3 or 4 different species included. They are only found in Kenya and Tanzania. They are further restricted as they prefer higher elevations in the foothills or montane forests of Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Meru, and the Eastern Arc Mountains. It is actually this mountainous terrain that may be the reason for the many subspecies, despite the species' small range. For alpine animals, mountains represent islands of habitat. However, there is no way to reach other mountains, and then the populations can become isolated from each other, resulting in the variation seen within this species. Eastern tree hyraxes seem to prefer sheltering in rock crevices, which is more similar to the rock and bush hyraxes than to any of their other close relatives. They are still highly arboreal animals, and typically feed on leaves in the forest canopy. Like other hyraxes, they have a designated place for their waste, but in their case they tend to have their midden among tree roots. While some studies have found that the species is solitary, like other tree hyraxes, a study in the Taita Hills in Kenya found that they are actually very social. In this area, they were always seen in groups and had social structures more similar to rock hyraxes. Some of the group would remain on guard while others foraged, and would warn of approaching danger. Males have long and complex vocalizations to convey information about themselves, again more similar to rock hyraxes. It is unknown if these behaviours are seen in other parts of their range, and more research is needed to confirm this. They are listed by the IUCN as near threatened, making them the only hyrax with a threat rating higher than least concern. This does make sense, however, due to their very small range and highly fragmented habitat. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hyraxes are a fascinating group of animals that are more often overlooked in favour of their more popular relatives, the elephants and manatees. However, they are a diverse group that require more study to properly sort out their phylogenetic complexities. Thank you for listening, and feel free to suggest another group of animals you want to see me cover in the comments.